Washington Street in Chinatown was not a place you would walk to because it was considered very dangerous, and it was full of all pornographic theater.
Go over to Washington Street, sure, you just walk down there. What's the big deal? And there's no big deal, you know.
It was very ugly to see prostitutes and drug dealers and sex movies and sex magazines.
Washington Street was the center of the combat zone. Chinatown was on the edge of it. Back in the 1960s, the name Combat Zone was popularized through a series of articles by Gene Cole, a reporter for the Boston Daily Record. The term Combat Zone seemed to cover the character of the zone, which was known for crime and violence, as well as a popular destination for many soldiers and sailors from the port of Boston. In 1974, to contain the spread of adult entertainment businesses, the Boston Redevelopment Authority officially designated the Combat Zone as the city's adult entertainment district.
The thing that made the Combat Zone possible was the government trying to fix a difficult problem by imposing on the Chinese. The city did not want it to be all over the city, so they defined a zone that was permitted in that few blocks. And of course, they couldn't do that in a rich neighborhood. They did that because the Chinese have no power.
Toonie Lee is a longtime Chinatown resident and former head of the Department of Urban Studies and Planning at MIT. In his recollection, the Combat Zone was an ugly place that no one wanted to live near.
It was very bad for Chinatown because the prostitution, and it kept people from coming down there because visitors, tourists, were afraid of the area.
We just wouldn't walk here, period.
Alan Phillips is an ESL instructor for the Asian American Civic Association.
We would often go to Chinatown, like many of my roommates were Chinese, so we'd go to restaurants, but we'd either drive in or walk around the long way to enter Chinatown through Neyland Street, which was safer rather than coming in through Washington Street, which is more seedy.
However, even at that time, the residents of Chinatown were developing fond memories.
The Combat Zone was not really considered a really bad place because there was 2 theaters that showed Chinese movies, and all the Chinese families would go to the theater that was showing American movies, and they would wait until 10 o'clock. That's when they show the Chinese movies. It was actually Cantonese movies. I think a lot of people are sitting in adult movie theaters looking around and says, who's all these Chinese parents sitting there, mothers and fathers? How come they're all sitting here? They're not here to watch the movie, are they?
In early 1984, Boston's new mayor, Raymond L. Flynn, declared his opposition to the Combat Zone. In a series of public statements, Flynn said that adult entertainment districts have no place in Boston. Heading into the 1980s, the Combat Zone started to decline for several reasons.
The sex movies became available on VCR. Before, the only way you could see a pornographic movie was to go down to the Combat Zone. And then when the VCR was invented, VHS, people could rent the movies in the suburbs. So that dropped the business a lot.
Economic pressures may do what one city administration after another could not.
The 1980s, many neighborhoods, they started to become gentrified, and the economy improved at the time there. And slowly, I guess, people started to put their eyes on the Chinatown area.
I think the biggest issue is the social change. And Americans became more used to sex. You can go to the internet now, you go to VCR. So today, anybody can find all kinds of pornography on the internet. You don't even have to leave home. So, no need for Combat Zone anymore.
Civic engagement is also crucial to the change. William Moy is the founder of China Crime Watch.
Well, it was a dangerous place to be at night, and the community gets tired of it. We set up a Chinatown Crime Watch. Well, it's all volunteers. They just walk. They have blue vests on. It says Chinatown Crime Watch on it. If there's any problems, we have contact with the Boston police. They call the police, and it's quite successful. So.
Mei Liu was a civic engagement coordinator for the Asian Community Development Corporation. While she was trying to unify residents of Chinatown to protect their political rights, she encountered some difficulty in terms of people's political awareness.
他们一听到政治都是很害怕，说我不管政治的。我说这每个是不同的，你是公民哈，你有投票权，你去投票，你有声音。
The only people who vote in Chinatown are the elderly. They come out for every single election. Young people in Chinatown don't vote.
如果你真的不去投票，你去市政府示威游行也是没有什么用的，因为他们签那个petition， 你签的时候还有名字，还有那个地址，他们会查的，收到查你是不是选民啊，有没有常常出来选呢？他们查到那记录的嘛。
The situation actually got better. However, with more and more development coming into downtown Boston and Chinatown, property prices in this area were also going up rapidly. According to Zillow, a well-known online real estate database company, the median home value in Chinatown is $989,600. Chinatown's home values have gone up 27.1% over the past year, and Zillow predicts they will rise 6.6% within the next year. Chinatown's foreclosure rate is much greater than Boston's and the national value, which means Chinatown's market health is at risk.
以前 Chinatown 的 housing 是很便宜的，2007年差不多是700块一个月。Ashton 他们盖了很高的房，隔壁那些房东看到，哎呀，他那个租金这么贵啊，我也涨价了，所以就涨了一半，所以很多人就付不起。
It's very difficult to find a place that's affordable in Chinatown, so that it's easier to just move out.
There were no people being pushed out. They're coming in to places that were not residential, not occupied by people, occupied by parking lots, offices.
Lee doesn't think gentrification is actually happening in Chinatown, as affordable housing exists to keep people from being forced out.
More and more high-income people coming into the area, especially on the edge. But they have not really, in any big measure, displaced many people.
You know, because it takes us so much effort, so much time to just build 95 affordable units. Yet, you know, in that same amount of time, in 11 years, there were probably, 3,000 or more market rate units that got built in and around Chinatown. So we are so far behind the rate of the development of the market rate. We are not catching up.
Angie Liu is the Director of Real Estate for the Asian Community Development Corporation, a nonprofit organization providing housing and community services to Chinatown residents.
One difficulty is that Chinatown is extremely dense and very built out. So to build any new development, there really is not a lot of land left over free for development. So what we have in Chinatown here really are a few parcels that are owned by the city of Boston. So those are really the only sites left available to develop. The other difficulty is the high development cost to build in Boston. It currently costs about $400,000 per apartment. So that means it takes a long time to put together all of the financing sources to build just one project. When I think about the difference between affordable housing development compared to a market rate housing development, market rate, where their money comes from, it may just be very simple, maybe from 1, 2, or 3 sources. They might have a loan and then they have some, equity investment, and that may be it. But for us, every single project has, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different sources, because you have to cobble and pull all these sources together. And that's why it takes a long time to put a project together.
Along with developing new affordable housing, ACDC is also working to preserve existing units.
Not everyone may be aware that affordable housing, almost all of them, they actually have an expiration date, so they're not affordable forever. Some buildings, they might expire in 40, 50 years. That sounds like a long time, but believe it or not, buildings that were built in the 60s and 70s, they're now nearing that end. And so what that means is, depending on who owns them, they may not be nonprofits, or they may be thinking, when the time's up, I want to cash out, because their building is in a very good location, so they can get a lot of money for it. So that would be a huge loss to Chinatown, because once Chinatown lose those apartments, they're not coming back, you know. So in the future, we would like to do more preservation work, because while it's really important to create new units, new apartments like One Greenway, if we spend all this money to build new ones, but we're losing old ones, then you're not making gain overall. You really need to do both.
Nonprofits like ACDC are trying to slow down the pace of gentrification through building and preserving affordable housing. However, some still worry that with ongoing gentrification, Chinatown will one day disappear.
他们觉得如果 Chinatown 这样继续下去，就好像那个华盛顿 DC 一样，就没有中国人住在这里了，民群死亡。
According to the 2010 census, the number of white people living in Chinatown has increased 241.7% from 2000 to 2010, compared to the Asian population's increase of only 7.1%.
Together, and if the more you have outsiders coming in, and it could very well be people who just think that this is a good real estate investment, but they don't necessarily identify with the Chinatown neighborhood. So that means they may not necessarily feel the need or want to participate in community life in Chinatown. Then, you know, someday you're going to walk down the street. You don't know who your neighbors are, you know, and it's just people doing their own thing. There's no sense of community anymore.
Nevertheless, as long as hope for a better future doesn't disappear, neither will Chinatown.